For the past decade or so, those who haven't followed Scottish football really haven't missed out on much. Since Rangers went into administration and had to work their way back up the ranks of Scotland's lower leagues, Celtic have enjoyed one of the most dominant spells of any domestic league in Europe, recently capturing their 8th straight league title, and a win over Hearts May 25th at Hampden Park would secure the elusive treble, meaning that Celtic had won all 3 domestic competitions 3 years running. Still though, while they are enjoying their most successful spell in history, a club of Celtic stature are never satisfied, and although they've had a stranglehold on Scottish football for what feels like forever now, they've made little to no progress in Europe during this time period. With Brendan Rodgers recently departing for Leicester while on the brink of history, a search for a new boss has begun. Because while caretaker manager Neil Lennon is a club legend and has done a great job seeing Celtic to the finish line this season, is he really the right man to spearhead Celtic into the future? Because with Rangers under Steven Gerrard rapidly improving and posing a bigger threat by the year, that here we go 10 in a row pipe dream could go up in flames if Celtic can't maintain their distance from the rest of the pack. That's where the currently unemployed Jose Mourinho comes into the picture, who would bring the much needed European experience to Celtic Park and more. Today though, we're not only going to look at why Celtic needs Mourinho, but also why Mourinho needs Celtic every bit as much too. So first things first, let's establish the elephant in the room, because a lot of people understandably not from Scotland might not understand just how big of a club Celtic are. I'm telling you right now for fact, Celtic are the biggest club in Britain outside of the top 6. Week in, week out they sell out Celtic Park, which holds a capacity of 61,000, making it the 3rd biggest stadium in the UK excluding Wembley. Celtic have won the European Cup, the Champions League equivalent of its time, and are the 2nd most successful club ever, with the 2nd most total trophies of any team ever, behind only local rivals Rangers with 107 to 115. In terms of club stature, Celtic are about as big as it gets, though what separates them from the other top clubs in the UK is the money they bring in from TV revenue. The English leagues are light years ahead of the Scottish leagues as it is, but with Celtic walking away with just 2.5 million for winning the league in TV money, while relegated Premiership clubs are pulling in close to 100 million, makes it impossible for Celtic to compete. I tell you right now that if Celtic and Rangers, much like Swansea and Cardiff, were allowed to play in the Premier League, within 5 to 10 years they'd be knocking on the door of the top 4. But even with the limitations that come with playing north of the border, Celtic have been massively underachieving. There's no reason why clubs like Porto, Ajax, Galatasaray, Basel and other elite clubs from outside Europe's top 5 leagues can consistently make noise in both the Champions and Europa leagues, while Celtic make it out the group stages once every blue moon. The club has been content with mediocrity for too long now, and I say that meaning they shouldn't be going seasons worth of games undefeated domestically, to then losing to a team called Lincoln Red Imps in the earliest stages of Champions League qualification. So who could Celtic possibly bring in that not only can hold it down domestically with Rangers on the come up, but get them back where they belong in the European picture and respectably competing against Europe's top clubs? From strictly a footballing standpoint, Jose Mourinho makes the most sense. Now I know this seems like a fantasy, perhaps a little unrealistic when you take the finances into consideration, but hear me out. Jose Mourinho is as high profile a manager as there is in the sport, but at what point does what validated him in the 2000s expire? What I mean by that is in every argument you ever hear that's pro-Mourinho these days, we hear about what he did with Porto winning them the Champions League, how he got the better of Alex Ferguson his first spell at Chelsea, how he pioneered the park the bus playstyle that knocked off Pep's Barca at their very best. We're in a different era of football now. What you did yesterday only holds so much value. Claudio Ranieri, for example, won the Premier League with Leicester City, a team that were projected to be relegated that year in 2016. Not only was he sacked by that same team he did the impossible with less than a year later, but he's managed another 3 clubs since in 3 different countries and now looks like he won't even be coaching next season. Let's take a look at Mourinho's CV from 2010 onwards, having managed Real Madrid, Chelsea and Manchester United, 3 of the world's biggest clubs. In over 8 years, he's managed 1 league title and the Spanish Cup with Real Madrid, a Premier League and League Cup with Chelsea and the Europa and League Cup with United. He was sacked from all 3 jobs. While he had moderate success, people remember his time with those 3 clubs for how ugly it got when it ended. At Real Madrid and United, he'd lost the locker room, and his last year at Chelsea, he had them closer to being relegated to the Championship than winning the league title. So what's actually next for Mourinho? Tell me which one of the top 6 in England he could actually go to. Tell me why he should go back to Italy just to come up second best to Juve every year. If it's not Bayern or PSG, how many other clubs can offer Jose more than Celtic can? Even if it's just a stopgap for a few years to revive his credibility. possibility, because if he gets another top job and fails, he could be finished. Why not take a few years at Celtic, win a bunch of league titles in yet another country, and try to have the same kind of success with Celtic in Europe as he did at Porto, which kick-started his career? I promise you, if Mourinho was the man that saw Celtic out to their 10th league title in a row, it'd be one of his greatest managerial accomplishments, in the sense that Rangers will never be able to live that down in Glasgow. As to whether or not he can help Celtic make the jump in Europe, we see how important it is for managers to have connections, especially in Scottish football, where they can't pay as much as other leagues. Damn near every Liverpool Where They Now player that played alongside Gerrard has been linked with Rangers. Mourinho has won in Portugal, England, Italy and Spain. He'd be getting on the phone bringing in high profile vets from all those countries. And let's also not act like Celtic and Scottish football in general aren't producing better players. In the upcoming Champions League final between Liverpool and Spurs, 3 key players made a name for themselves in Scotland. Andy Robertson a few years ago was actually rejected by Celtic in favour of Kieran Tierney. He's now about to play his second UCL final in 2 years. Victor Wanyama starred at Celtic and when fit is a regular player for Spurs, and Virgil Van Dijk first made a name for himself also at Celtic Park, who right now is not only probably the best defender in the world, but the only player on planet Earth with a case to best Lionel Messi to this year's Ballon d'Or. While not playing in the Premiership, Lyon's Moussa Dembele made the move from Celtic last year. He's managed 14 goals and 31 appearances in his debut season in League One. Point is, Celtic are no joke, and are for sure a team Jose has a lot of respect for. And for those reasons I've already been into, unless the jobs in Munich or Paris present itself, Jose Mourinho might need Celtic every bit as much as Celtic need Mourinho.